Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Among the stars, where nebulae bloom like cosmic flowers and black holes devour time itself, the oldest human tradition survives: marriage by arrangement. In the ancient days of Earth, families would bind their children not through love, but through reason, to unite bloodlines, end feuds, and strengthen positions in a harsh world. Millennia have passed, but history, like a stubborn old general, refuses to retire its strategies. In our modern galactic society, where stellar kingdoms stretch across the void, where power has merged with quantum mechanics, and where lineage outweighs armadas, the marriage contract remains the ultimate alliance. The truly powerful do not conquer with warships, they conquer with wedding rings. The story of House Ashbourne and House Ranrock began like most great alliances, with blood and fire. The records tell of two warriors, Darian Ashbourne, a human commander with eyes like steel and fists like thunder, and Zaylin Ranrock, a violet-skinned noble whose ancestral power could tear reality apart. They met on the battlefield of Vega Prime, first as enemies commanding opposing forces, then as reluctant allies against a greater threat, and finally as brothers in all but blood. When the Crimson Devourers, those ancient horrors from beyond the galactic rim, attacked the outer worlds, Darian and Zaylin stood together when others fled. During the final battle, Darian threw himself between Zaylin and a Devourer's maw, nearly sacrificing his life for his friend. That night, as medics scrambled to save Darian's shredded body, the two warriors made a pact that would echo through the centuries. "Our grandchildren will marry," they declared, blood mixing with wine in their cups. For nothing binds friendship like family ties that span the ages. A century has passed. The time has come to honor that oath. The Ranrock Palace loomed against the twin moons of Cerulean Prime, a massive structure of crystal and obsidian that seemed to absorb the very light around it. Unlike the golden and marble palaces favored by humans, the Ranrocks preferred what they called simplicity and lavender, though there was nothing simple about the 60-story fortress with its gravity-defying spires and force shield domes. Inside the Grand Hall, representatives from 12 great houses mingled, their formal attire ranging from liquid metal suits to dresses woven from captured starlight. The air hummed with whispered conversations and the occasional chime of neural interfaces connecting to the palace's security grid. Everyone awaited the arrival of the lost boy. Cale Troy Ashbourne felt their stares as the massive doors parted before him. 6 elite Ranrock guards flanked the entrance, their energy blades humming with barely restrained power. Cale strode forward, each step of his black combat boots echoing against the violet marble floor. His leather jacket, worn and scarred from actual combat, not the replicated kind favored by wealthy dilettantes, hung open just enough to reveal the combat mesh beneath. At 20, Cale was leaner than most expected, with a face that carried the sharp angles of his bloodline and eyes that seemed to shift color with his mood. A 3-day stubble framed his jaw, not from affectation but because he hadn't bothered to shave during the 5-day journey through hyperspace. As he reached the center of the hall, a furious voice cut through the measured silence from the balcony above. "Mom, why do I have to marry a human?" Every head turned upward. Rima Ranrock stood with her hands planted firmly on her hips, her posture radiating indignation. She was tall, even by Ranrock standards, with skin the color of twilight that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. Her silver hair cascaded in thick braids adorned with crystalline beads that amplified her natural power. The formal dress she wore, clearly under protest, featured a plunging neckline that accentuated her perfect figure, a combination of human anatomy and Ranrock grace that made her breathtaking even in her fury. "He's an orphan," she continued, her electric blue eyes flashing. "He has no power, No family. He even has hair like a smuggler. The last part she spat as though it were the greatest insult imaginable. Kale ignored the titters from the surrounding courtiers and continued his path toward Lady Tracia, Rima's mother and head of House Ranrock. The woman sat on a levitating throne that pulsed with energy, her face a perfect mask of diplomatic neutrality despite her daughter's outburst. Kale bowed with precise formality. Kale Ashbourne, arrived as contracted. Lady Tracia inclined her head with genuine respect. Welcome, last son of Ashbourne. The ancient pact is honored by your presence. The whispers intensified around them. He hasn't even awakened. Pathetic boy. Not a trace of power in him. The Ashbournes were once great, but now a single boy without power? Lady Aurelia Valche, ancient in years though her body remained youthful through forbidden preservation power, stepped forward from the crowd. Her silver-white hair and emerald skin marked her as a hybrid of two ancient houses, and the rings on her fingers pulsed with stored spells. "If he is so weak," she declared loudly, "how dare he address Tracia directly? A worthless boy doesn't deserve even the dignity of a slap." She raised her hand, energy crackling between her fingers. The hand never reached its target. Kale caught her wrist mid-air, his movement so fast that even the enhanced reflexes of the nobility couldn't track it. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. He pulled her closer, his grip firm around her waist. Under his open jacket, his bare, sculpted torso pressed against her expensive gown. The ancient sorceress froze, her cheeks flushing a deeper emerald. "Out of respect for your beauty and the family of my future bride," Kale whispered, his voice carrying in the stunned silence. "You'll get off easy this time, but if I ever see disrespect toward the head of House Ashbourne again—" He leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing her ear. "I won't be so merciful." He released her and took a step back. In the next instant, a wave of invisible force rippled through the air. Space itself seemed to distort around Lady Aurelia as she dropped to her knees, forced down by some unseen pressure. Her head bowed involuntarily, and her breathing became labored as though the atmosphere around her had suddenly become as dense as liquid metal. Silence blanketed the hall. Jaws dropped in synchrony. Kale hadn't just awakened. He controlled phantom pressure energy, a power even the ancients feared to touch. It was the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space-time on a local level, to bend reality to one's will. On the balcony, Rima's expression shifted from disdain to shock. A flush crept up her violet skin to the roots of her silver hair. Dozens of House Ranrock defenders instantly activated their energy blades, the weapons humming to life with various deadly frequencies. They surrounded Kale, their faces hard beneath their ceremonial helmets. "You're dead, human," their commander snarled. "No one attacks a noble in House Ranrock's sanctuary." Kale stood motionless, his expression calm. Then, with a casual motion, he extended his hand and one of the strongest warriors, a 7-foot Ranrock hybrid with enhanced cybernetics, was yanked forward as though pulled by an invisible rope. Kale's hand closed around the warrior's head, and with terrifying strength, he slammed the man down. The marble floor cracked with a thunderous boom, web-like fractures spreading outward from the impact point. Before the other guards could react, a woman appeared at the entrance. She moved with impossible grace, as though gravity itself bent to accommodate her. Her skin was human pale, but her presence filled the room with pressure that made Kale's demonstration seem like a child's trick. With a single wave of her hand, the remaining warriors were thrown backward, their weapons deactivating as they crashed into the walls. Kale immediately dropped to one knee, head bowed. "Master, why are you here?" The silence deepened as everyone present realized they were outmatched. Who was this woman? What house did she belong to? How could she possess such overwhelming power? She approached Kale, her steps fluid like water flowing over stone. "Kale, darling," she said, her voice musical and dangerous. "I asked you to come modestly and claim what's yours." She reached down, her fingers tracing his jawline with intimate familiarity. Kale remained composed, his eyes meeting hers without flinching. "They insulted House Ashbourne. I couldn't allow that, just as you taught me." The scene shifted, rippling like water disturbed by a stone, revealing a memory from 15 years earlier. A 5-year-old Kale huddled against a dirty wall in the slums of Nova Arcadia. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, blood trickling from his split lip. Around him, a circle of older children jeered and threw stones. "Ashbourne trash! Your family is nothing, just like you. The great Ashbournes, they're all dead because they were weak. You should join them." The children closed in, kicking at the small boy who had curled into a protective ball. Then, like a vision from another world, a woman appeared. She moved as though dancing, her elegant dress flowing around her as if made from liquid starlight. The bullies fell silent, sensing power beyond their comprehension. She knelt beside little Kale, her perfect features composed in an expression of gentle concern that barely masked tremendous rage. "Little one," she said softly, "how dare you let them insult your family while you smile?" Kale looked up at her through swollen eyes. "But it's true," he whispered. "They're all dead. They abandoned me. I want to die too." Her hand moved in a blur, delivering a sharp slap that Kale barely registered. Physical pain was nothing new to him. "You," she said, her voice suddenly hard as neutronium, "are the last and only heir of House Ashbourne. I don't care how old you are. You must be strong." She leaned closer, her face inches from his. "Never, ever, dishonor the name of your great family. Now get up and answer these foolish children." Something shifted in young Kale's eyes. He rose, wiping blood from his mouth, and turned to face his tormentors. Within moments, the bullies lay groaning on the ground, defeated by a boy half their size who fought with sudden, terrible precision. The woman smiled, satisfied. "Kneel," she commanded. "Swear the oath of apprentice. From this moment forward, I am your master." The memory faded, bringing the present back into focus. Kale remained kneeling before his master in the grand hall of House Ranrock, surrounded by stunned nobility and fallen warriors. Lady Tracia stood from her throne, her expression a mixture of concern and calculation. "I believe," she said carefully, "that introductions are in order." Kale's master turned, her smile predatory. "Indeed they are. I am Celine." She offered no house name, no title, just the single name that hung in the air like a blade. Rima descended from the balcony, moving with lithe grace down a spiral staircase. Her earlier disdain had been replaced by cautious interest as she approached her mother's side. "The contract stands," Lady Tracia declared, her voice carrying the weight of ancient law. "But perhaps we should discuss the details more thoroughly." Kale rose to his feet, his eyes meeting Rima's across the hall. For the first time, they truly saw each other, not as pawns in an ancient game, but as individuals with power and purpose of their own. "I look forward to it," he said, his voice pitched so only Rima could hear. Her electric blue eyes narrowed, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "Don't get comfortable, human," she murmured. "I'm still not convinced you're worth my time." Kale smiled, a dangerous expression that transformed his face. "Then I'll have to prove you wrong, won't I?" Rima Ranrock stormed through the crystalline corridors of her family's ancestral palace, cheeks burning with a violet flush that deepened her already purple skin. Servants and minor nobles flattened themselves against the walls as she passed, recognizing the telltale energy signatures of a furious Ranrock heir. the slight crackle of bioelectricity that made the air taste like ozone, the almost imperceptible gravitational distortion that made ornaments tremble on their shelves. She burst through the quantum-locked doors of the family gardens, a massive biodome spanning 3 acres beneath an artificial sky programmed to mimic the homeworld the Ranrocks had left behind generations ago. Here, extinct flora from a dozen worlds thrived in carefully maintained eco-pockets. Rima headed straight for the most isolated section, the lunar grove. The lunar trees rose 50 feet tall, their bark like polished silver, their leaves translucent discs that captured and amplified the artificial moonlight. They grew nowhere else in the galaxy, a gift from a now extinct civilization to House Ranrock for services unknown and unrecorded. Rima threw herself onto a curved stone bench beneath the largest tree, its pulsing silver light bathing her violet skin in an ethereal glow. "Insufferable! Arrogant! Primitive!" she hissed, yanking the ceremonial pins from her silver hair until it cascaded down her back. "A human with stolen power strutting into my home like he owns it!" "I don't strut," came a voice from behind her. "It's more of a confident stride." Rima whirled around, blue eyes flashing with fury. Cale Ashbourne leaned casually against the tree trunk, arms folded across his chest. The lunar tree's light played across the planes of his face, highlighting the sharp cheekbones and the slight scar that ran along his jaw. "How did you get in here?" she demanded. "These gardens are genetically keyed to Ranrock bloodlines only." Cale shrugged. "The same way I caught Lady Valshay's hand, the same way I cracked your marble floor." His smile was dangerous. "I bend rules, including the genetic kind." Rima stood, her fists clenched at her sides. "You humiliated me in front of the great houses." "You started it," Cale replied mildly. "Something about my hair looking like a smuggler's?" "Because it does." She gestured wildly at his head. "Did you cut it with a vibroblade in the dark?" "Combat knife, actually. 3 days ago. Limited mirror access on cargo transports." Rima's eyes narrowed. "Why would the last Ashbourne heir travel on a cargo ship? Shouldn't you have a fleet at your disposal? Personal cruisers? Or did your family squander their fortune along with their power?" Something flickered behind Cale's eyes, a brief flash of pain quickly suppressed. "I traveled how I needed to travel. Not all of us were raised in palaces, Princess." "Don't call me that." "What should I call my future wife, then?" he asked, pushing off from the tree and taking a step toward her. Rima instinctively backed up. "This marriage won't happen. Not after your display in the hall." "You mean when I defended myself from assault? Or when I demonstrated that House Ashbourne isn't as dead as everyone believed? When you attacked a noble in our sanctuary?" Rima's voice rose. "You could have started a blood feud." "She's lucky I didn't finish one," Cale replied, his tone hardening. "Where I come from, raising a hand against someone earns you a lot worse than what she got." Rima snatched a fruit from a nearby bush, a luminescent spheroid that pulsed with neurological toxins, deadly to humans but merely tart to Ranrocks. She hurled it at his head with perfect aim. Cale caught it one-handed. Instead of tossing it aside, he raised it to his mouth and took a deliberate bite. The fruit's surface sizzled on contact with human saliva, a chemical reaction that should have triggered instant paralysis. Cale chewed thoughtfully. "Bit tangy. Could use some sweetener." Rima's jaw dropped. "That's a venom fruit. It should have killed you instantly." "Should have," he agreed, taking another bite. Juice dribbled down his chin. "I've built up immunities to most toxins, part of my training." "What kind of training turns a human into whatever you are?" "The kind you get when your entire family is slaughtered and you're hunted across 17 systems." Silence fell between them, broken only by the soft chiming of the lunar tree's leaves as they caught the artificial breeze. "I didn't know," Rima said finally. You didn't ask. Kale tossed the half-eaten fruit aside. You assumed I was some weak human, thrust into an arrangement neither of us wanted. Isn't that what you are? She challenged, stepping closer, bound by some ancient pact between old men who never consulted us. I'm here by choice, Kale said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I could have ignored the contract, disappeared into the outer rim, but I didn't. Why not? Because an Ashborn doesn't break promises. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. And because I was curious about the violet-skinned princess I was supposed to marry. And? Rima asked, suddenly breathless despite herself. Are you disappointed? Not yet. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. But the night is young. The tension between them crackled like a faulty shield generator. Rima felt the strange pull of him. Human, yet not human. Familiar, yet alien. She wanted to slap him, and something else she wasn't ready to name. The moment shattered as a distant explosion rocked the palace. Alarms blared through the garden's comm system, and the artificial sky flickered from dusk to blood-red emergency lighting. What? Rima began. Kale grabbed her arm, yanking her down as a section of the garden dome shattered inward. Crystalline shards rained down, deflected at the last second by Kale's energy shield that materialized around them. Stay down, he ordered, all playfulness gone from his voice. He drew a compact weapon from beneath his jacket, sleek black metal with pulsing energy nodes. Guards! Rima shouted into her wrist communicator. Breach in the family gardens, respond! Static answered her. Through the broken dome, a shuttle descended, its hull bearing the unmistakable black insignia of an inverted sun pierced by a sword. House Veloran. Impossible, Rima whispered. The planetary shields have been compromised, Kale finished grimly. Someone sold your security codes. How do you know that? Because he's been planning this for years. Kale's face had gone hard, his eyes focused on the descending ship. Malric Veloran doesn't leave anything to chance. Veloran? Rima's blood ran cold. The devourer of laws? The man who murdered my family? Kale's voice was ice. And now he's come for yours. The shuttle touched down, its landing ramp extending with a pneumatic hiss. Troops poured out. Not standard mercenaries, but gene-modified soldiers with grafted weapons and enhanced reflexes. Rima reached for her ceremonial dagger, the only weapon she had. We need to warn Mother. The palace defenses are already compromised, Kale interrupted. We're on our own. Then we fight our way out. Kale looked at her with something like respect. We can't. There are too many of them, and they'll be expecting resistance. He glanced at the path leading deeper into the garden. There's another way out of here, isn't there? Some secret passage the Ranrocks built? Rima hesitated, then nodded. Behind the Weeping Oracle. But we'd be abandoning my mother, my people. We'd be surviving to fight back, Kale corrected. Sometimes retreat is strategy, not cowardice. Another explosion rocked the palace as they crept through the underbrush, avoiding the search beams of Veloran troops. They reached the ancient statue known as the Weeping Oracle, a 12-foot figure carved from black stone that perpetually leaked a silver liquid from its eyes. Rima pressed her palm against the statue's base, her DNA triggering a hidden mechanism. A section of the garden floor slid aside, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. How did you know about Malric? She whispered as they descended. How did you know he would come? Because I've been hunting him since I was 9 years old, Kale replied, his voice devoid of emotion. Or rather, we've been hunting each other. The passage sealed behind them as distant shouts echoed through the garden. Emergency lights flickered on, casting them in a crimson glow as they hurried down the ancient tunnel. I don't understand, Rima said. struggling to keep up with Kale's pace. Why would one of the great houses attack us openly? The conclave is a paper shield, Kale cut her off. Malric doesn't care about sanctions or political consequences. He wants power, pure and absolute. He paused at a junction in the tunnel. Which way? Rima pointed left. That leads to the old defense bunker. It has communications, weapons. She studied his face in the dim light. You're remarkably calm for someone trapped in a palace under siege. A ghost of a smile touched Kale's lips. Who says I'm trapped? Our enemies have surrounded us, cut communications, and are probably executing anyone loyal to my house as we speak. Yet you look satisfied. Not satisfied, Kale corrected. Patient. My teacher always said, never rush into vengeance. Let your enemy believe they have won until the moment you tear their victory away. They reached the bunker, a fortified chamber with walls of neutronium alloy and banks of ancient but functional technology. Rima immediately went to the communication console while Kale secured the door. Why aren't you more angry? Rima demanded suddenly. This man destroyed your family. He's attacking mine. Yet you act like this is all according to some plan. Because it is, Kale replied, checking the weapons cache. Malric believes I'm a frightened boy hiding from his power. Let him keep believing that. He selected a modified pulse rifle, checking its charge. Besides, my teacher is here. Your teacher? That woman who appeared in the hall? Celine. Yes. Are you too? Rima hesitated, a flush darkening her cheeks. Together? Kale burst into laughter, the sound echoing off the metal walls. He laughed until tears formed at the corners of his eyes, his whole body shaking with mirth. What's so funny? Rima demanded, embarrassment turning to irritation. The idea of being together with Celine, he managed between chuckles. She's practically my mother. Before Rima could respond, the bunker's monitors flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the palace interior. In the grand hall where they had met only hours before, Malric Valoran now sat on Lady Tracia's throne, surrounded by his troops and several Ranrock nobles who had apparently switched allegiance. Malric was tall, with skin so pale it was almost translucent, revealing the network of black veins beneath. His eyes were implants, mechanical orbs that glowed a sickly yellow. Half his face was a masterpiece of reconstructive surgery. The other half bore ritual scarification that mapped the star systems under his control. Your loyalty to House Ranrock ends today, his amplified voice boomed through the hall. Swear fealty to House Valoran, or share the fate of House Ashbourne, erased from history and memory. Many nobles stepped forward, kneeling before him. Lady Tracia remained standing, her face a mask of defiance. Not for this did we forge alliances, she declared. Not for this did we honor ancient bonds. Malric laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Bonds? Contracts? These are chains for the weak. He gestured to his troops. I offer a simple choice, power or death. My daughter will never be yours, Lady Tracia spat. Your daughter, Malric smiled, revealing teeth filed to points, would make an acceptable fifth wife. Perhaps she'll even bear me an heir before I tire of her. Rima's hands clenched into fists as she watched the screen. That monster! The bunker wall exploded inward, showering them with debris. Kale grabbed Rima, shielding her with his body as dust and metal fragments filled the air. When the chaos cleared, they stood facing a squad of Valoran elite guards, weapons primed. Time to go, Kale muttered, and before Rima could protest, he had blasted a hole in the opposite wall with concentrated energy from his palm. They fought their way through the palace's lower levels, Kale moving with lethal efficiency, while Rima used her natural Ranrock abilities to disrupt the neural systems of their attackers. They formed an unexpectedly effective team, covering each other's blind spots and anticipating movements. Eventually, they found themselves cornered near the grand hall where Malric held court. With enemies closing in from all sides, Kale made a decision. "We're going in." "That's suicide," Rima protested. "Trust me," Kale replied, his eyes locked on hers. "I've waited for this moment for 15 years." With a concentrated burst of energy, they blasted through the wall into the grand hall, the explosion throwing Valoran guards aside like discarded toys. Malric rose from the throne, his mechanical eyes widening in genuine surprise as he recognized Kale. "The child," he breathed. "You actually survived." "Disappointed?" Kale asked, stepping forward over the bodies of fallen guards. Malric's surprise turned to contempt. "Look at you, so calm. You must be terrified beyond reason." He smiled his pointed smile. "Understandable. For a 4-year-old to watch everything he loved burn. Such trauma never heals." Kale remained perfectly still, his expression neutral. "My teacher taught me that fear is just energy waiting to be redirected." "Kill the boy," Malric ordered his elite guard. "Bring me the girl. With those hips, she'll provide entertainment before becoming my bride." His guards, 7-foot chimeras with grafted weapons and neural enhancements, rushed forward. Not one reached their targets. Rima watched, transfixed, as Kale moved like water through their ranks. He didn't just fight. He danced, each movement flowing into the next with terrible precision. Heads separated from bodies, limbs were severed by invisible forces. The air itself seemed to become a weapon in his hands. Within minutes, Kale stood atop a mound of corpses, his clothes splattered with multicolored blood, his eyes fixed on Malric. "Almost disappointing," he said conversationally. "In my head you were much more powerful, more frightening." "Why?" Malric screamed, his composed facade cracking. "Why won't you die? Where did you get such power?" A story once told by his mentor surfaced, rippling across Kale's consciousness. 300 years ago, a small girl with pale skin huddled in the ruins of a burned village. The locals had called her cursed, a demon child who brought misfortune. The head of Clan Ashbourne, a towering man with kind eyes, found her among the ashes. "What's your name, little one?" he asked. "Celine," she whispered. "Why are you alone, Celine?" "They said I was cursed, that bad things happen around me." The clan leader knelt beside her. "They fear what they don't understand. Come with me, and I'll teach you to control the power inside you. You won't be alone anymore." The girl who would become the most powerful being in the galaxy looked up at the man who would become her father in all but blood. "Promise?" "An Ashbourne never breaks a promise," he said, extending his hand. The memory faded, bringing Kale back to the present, standing over the bodies of Malric's elite guard, with Rima staring at him in stunned silence. Before Malric could gather his remaining forces, a wave of pressure swept through the hall. Everyone froze in place, unable to move under the crushing weight of an invisible force. Celine entered, her steps measured and deliberate. She didn't walk so much as glide across the blood-slicked marble. The few loyalists who had sided with Malric collapsed to their knees, gasping for breath as if the air itself had turned to lead in their lungs. She approached Kale, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Despite the battlefield around them, not a drop of blood marred her immaculate appearance. "Today is the day, dear one," she said, her voice carrying throughout the silent hall. "Today we avenge our family and lay the foundation for a new beginning. House Ashbourne rises from the ashes." "Yes, master," Kale replied, his eyes never leaving Malric's face. Terror replaced the arrogance in Malric's mechanical eyes as he recognized the woman before him. He had heard legends, dismissed them as exaggerations. Now, faced with the truth, he scrambled backward, his boots slipping in the blood of his fallen soldiers. "No, it can't be," he stammered. "The Phantom Lady, the ghost of Ashbourne. You're just a myth." Celine smiled, a cold, beautiful expression. "Myths endure, Malric Valoran. People like you do not." Malric turned to flee, but never completed his first step. Cale extended his hand in a casual gesture, and Malric's massive body flew across the room as if yanked by an invisible cable. He slammed into Cale's outstretched arm, his throat caught in an iron grip. Cale lifted the much larger man with one hand, bringing Malric's terrified face level with his own. The hall fell into absolute silence. Even the wounded stopped their groaning. "The debt of blood is paid," Cale said, his voice clear and controlled, not with rage, but with justice. With a precise application of pressure, he crushed Malric's windpipe. There was no drama, no prolonged suffering, just the efficient execution of a sentence 15 years in the making. Malric's body slumped to the floor, his mechanical eyes flickering once before going dark forever. Cale turned and knelt before Celine, his head bowed. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Without you, I would have died in those ruins. Without your guidance, this moment would never have come." Celine placed her hands on Cale's shoulders and pulled him into an embrace. For the first time since he was a child, tears streamed down his face, not for Malric, but for the family he had lost, for the years of preparation, for the culmination of a journey that had consumed his entire life. "I waited 15 years, Celine whispered, her own eyes glistening. "I could have ended him any time, but this was your right as the future head of our house. Some debts can only be settled by the rightful heir." Lady Tracia approached cautiously, her regal bearing intact despite the chaos. "House Ranrock recognizes the debt of honor paid today," she announced formally. "The ancient alliance between Ranrock and Ashbourne stands renewed in blood." Around the hall, the nobles who had remained loyal to Ranrock bowed their heads. Those who had switched allegiance to Valoran trembled, awaiting judgment. "The traitors will face our justice," Lady Tracia continued, "but today is not for punishment. Today, we witness the rebirth of a great house." She turned to Cale and Celine. "House Ranrock pledges loyalty to House Ashbourne. Our strength is yours." Rima stepped forward, her blue eyes locked on Cale's. The anger and disdain she had shown earlier had transformed into something deeper, respect, perhaps, or something more. "If the contract still stands," she said, her voice steady despite the intensity of her gaze, "I would honor it." 3 months later, the palace of House Ranrock had been restored, the scars of battle erased by advanced technology and ancient craftsmanship. The Grand Hall, once a battlefield, now gleamed with decorations for the most significant wedding in recent galactic history. Representatives from all the great houses attended, some out of respect, others out of fear, most out of political necessity. The union of Ranrock and Ashbourne created a power block that could not be ignored. Cale stood at the ceremonial altar dressed in formal attire that merged human and Ranrock traditions. The black suit was cut in the style of ancient Earth, but the material shifted and flowed like liquid metal, embedded with microscopic crystals that caught the light with every movement. When Rima entered, a collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Her gown seemed woven from starlight itself, clinging to her perfect figure before cascading to the floor in an ethereal train. Her violet skin contrasted with the silver-white fabric, and her blue eyes shone with an intensity that made Cale's breath catch. They spoke their vows in the ancient languages of both houses, sealing their union not just as individuals but as representatives of their bloodlines. When they kissed, the assembled nobles erupted in applause, celebrating not just a marriage but the rebirth of an order they had thought lost forever. Later, at the reception, Kale and Rima found a moment of privacy on a balcony overlooking the Ranrock estates. The twin moons of Cerulean Prime painted the landscape in silver and blue. "Husband," Rima said, testing the word with a small smile. "I never thought I'd call a human that." "Wife," Kale replied with equal amusement. "I never thought I'd say that to anyone." "You were so certain about avenging your family," Rima said, leaning against the balcony railing. "Are you equally certain about building a new one?" Kale considered her question. Revenge was simple. Living is more complicated. "A wise answer," she laughed, "but not very romantic." "I'm not known for romance," he admitted, "but I am known for keeping my word." He took her hand, his expression serious. "I will be faithful to this union, Rima, not just because of our ancestors' pact, but because, in these months, I've come to admire you." "Admire?" She raised an eyebrow. "Such passion. Would you prefer I lie, claim some great love story after knowing you 3 months?" Rima's laugh was genuine. "No, I respect your honesty." She glanced back toward the reception. "Besides, there will be time for deeper feelings. And children," Kale added, his gaze following hers. "Heirs to both our houses." Rima's expression grew thoughtful. "Would you give them away in contract marriages as we were?" The question caught him off guard. "I hadn't considered it." "I have," she said. "Since the day you arrived, I was furious at my mother for binding me to a stranger. And now? Now I wonder if our grandparents were wiser than we knew." She squeezed his hand. "But I would want our children to have a choice, to meet their intended before the wedding day at least." Kale nodded slowly. "Tradition has value, but so does free will." He glanced at the stars above them. "Perhaps we can honor both." "A new tradition," Rima agreed, "for a new era." From the doorway, Celine watched the young couple with satisfaction. In her long life she had witnessed the rise and fall of many great houses, but none had captured her loyalty like the Ashbournes. They had saved her when others would have destroyed her, given her a home when she was lost, a purpose when she was adrift. Now, seeing Kale, the boy she had raised, trained, and loved as her own, beginning this new chapter, she felt a rare sense of completion. House Ashbourne would rise again, stronger than before, tempered by tragedy and renewed by this union. The night of celebration continued long into the early hours, but eventually the newlyweds retired to their chambers. The room had been prepared according to both human and Ranrock customs. Earth flowers mingled with crystal formations, the bed draped in silks that responded to body temperature. "So," Rima said, as the door closed behind them, "here we are." "Here we are," Kale agreed, suddenly awkward despite all his training and composure. She stepped closer, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were just another arrogant human. And now I know you're an arrogant human with impressive abilities," she teased, her lips curving into a smile. Kale caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And you're still a princess with a temper." "A queen," she corrected, "with a king who can actually keep up with her." Their kiss was different from the ceremonial one they had shared earlier. Deeper, honest, unobserved. Not love, perhaps, but the beginnings of something that could grow into it. 5 years later, Celine stood in the training hall of the new Ashbourne Palace, a structure that merged the architectural traditions of multiple species with cutting-edge technology. Before her, 2 children practiced basic energy manipulation exercises. The twins, Zayla and Darian, named for their great-grandfather. Despite being only 4, they already showed remarkable potential. Zayla had inherited her mother's violet skin and her father's intensity. Darian was paler, more human in appearance, but with the electric blue eyes of his Ranrock heritage. "Again," Celine instructed as Zayla's energy sphere dissipated too quickly. Focus on stability before power. Yes, Master Celine, the little girl replied, her face scrunching in concentration. Kale and Rima entered, their fingers intertwined in a casual intimacy that had developed over the years. They watched their children with obvious pride. "Not too hard on them, I hope," Kale said to his former teacher. Celine smiled. "No harder than I was on you." "That's what worries me," he replied. But his tone was light. Rima observed her daughter reforming the energy sphere, more stable this time. "They're advancing faster than expected." "They have good genes," Celine said, "and better training than their father had at their age." Kale chuckled. "I turned out all right." "You turned out exceptional," Celine corrected. "These two may surpass even you." Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Kale and Rima settled in their private study. The room was lined with ancient books and modern data crystals, a testament to their shared commitment to honoring tradition while embracing progress. "The Valoran remnants attempted another assassination today," Kale mentioned casually, reviewing security reports. "Third one this month." Rima barely looked up from her strategic planning display. "Did they at least try something original this time?" "Poisoned nano-drones in the ventilation system." "Boring. We neutralized that exact method last year." She swiped away a holographic projection. "Perhaps we should just finish them off once and for all." Kale shook his head. "They're desperate, not dangerous. Better to let them waste resources on failed attempts than drive them underground." Rima conceded with a nod. Over the years, their partnership had evolved into an effective balance of her aggressive instincts and his strategic patience. House Ashbourne had indeed risen from the ashes. Under their joint leadership, it had reclaimed its ancestral territories and forged new alliances throughout the galaxy. Their union had produced not just heirs but a genuine dynasty, respected and feared in equal measure. Epilogue. The legend continues. And so it came to pass that from the ashes of tragedy, the great house of Ashbourne rose once more. The alliance sealed in blood by Darien and Zaylin a century before had borne fruit beyond their wildest dreams. Where once there had been a frightened boy hiding in ruins, now stood a man who reshaped galactic politics with a word. Where once there was a haughty princess who scorned humans, now ruled a queen who united species through wisdom and strength. Their children grew to embody the best qualities of both bloodlines, the strategic brilliance of the Ashbournes and the fierce pride of the Ranrocks. Their twins, Zayla and Darien, would one day forge their own legends, expanding the influence of their house to distant star systems yet undreamed of. Celine, the eternal guardian, watched over them all, her powers undiminished by time. She had fulfilled her debt to the family that had saved her, training generation after generation of Ashbourne heirs, ensuring that the flame of their legacy would never again be extinguished. And when new threats arose from beyond the galactic rim, when ancient enemies returned and new challenges emerged, the united houses of Ashbourne and Ranrock stood ready. For this was not the end of their story, but merely the beginning of a new chapter in the cosmic tale of power, redemption, and the enduring strength of bonds forged in both blood and choice. Some say that even now, in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, their descendants rule with the same blend of power and principle, honoring the oath that began with two wounded warriors by a campfire and the love that bloomed between a human warrior and a violet-skinned princess who learned to see beyond appearances to the heart beneath. For in a universe of infinite possibilities, perhaps the greatest power of all is the ability to forge one's own destiny, a lesson that House Ashbourne would carry forward into eternity. Dear Stellar Voyager, as the twin moons of this tale set beyond the horizon, I find myself wondering which parts of the Ashbourne legacy resonated within you. Perhaps you recognize something of yourself in Kale's patient determination, or in Rima's fierce pride. Or maybe you glimpsed, between the lines of ancient pacts and quantum battles, the simple truth that binds all great houses across any galaxy, that power comes not from dominance, but from connection. The cosmic dance between destiny and choice continues beyond these pages. The children of House Ashbourne Ranrock await their own adventures, and Celine's watchful eyes scan distant stars for threats yet unnamed. There are still contracts to be honored, enemies to face, and perhaps most challenging of all, hearts to be understood. Until our paths cross again in the grand nexus of stories, may your own legacy burn bright among the stars.